Hello and welcome back to the show. Today is episode 606, and I'm really happy to have my new friend Natalie Silverstein here with me. Natalie is an author, speaker, and passionate advocate for family and youth service. After a career in healthcare administration, she now works as a freelance writer and consultant with a particular focus on the nonprofit sector and community service. Her first book, Simple Acts: The Busy Family's Guide to Giving Back, was published by Griffin House in 2019 and was named as one of the top 10 books for parents who want to raise kind kids by the HuffPost. Her second book, Simple Acts: The Busy Teen's Guide to Giving Back, will be published by Free Spirit Press in early 2022. Welcome, Natalie.
Thank you so much, Erin. It's such a pleasure to meet you and to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And right before we hit record, we were talking about the beautiful things you have in your background.
Yeah. So my daughter, who's now 13, she was at summer camp a few years ago, and they do wood shop, right? So they learn how to actually cut wood on those, which makes me like a little bit nervous, but she made this and they did a very sweet thing. They took a picture of her and they sent it to me, special. And I had just written the book that year. And then I coincidentally found out afterwards that her counselor, her favorite counselor in her bunk, has these exact words tattooed on her shoulder, on her elbow. It says, "Be kind." And so they took a picture of her face next to her counselor's elbow. So we had a sort of a moment that year when I came out with the book. And of course, it sits behind me whenever I do a Zoom call or a talk with parents or a podcast. And it's just a nice little inspiration, and it sits in my kitchen. So we can always be reminded amongst our own family to be kind to each other.
I absolutely love that. And what a great message to just kind of have in your physical space every day. I love that.
Right. You think to yourself, like, I wonder if we hung more things like that in our space with our kids, we would take a moment before we yelled or before we lost our temper. We can always be kind. We can always speak kindly to each other, respectfully. And I think that that's something that I know that you advocate for the parents who follow you. And we want to speak to ourselves and our kids the way that, and we want our kids to respect and speak to others in the world and to address them in the same way that they would want to be addressed, right? This sort of the golden rule.
I love it. So let's talk a little bit more about your book. Well, the one that you've already written.
Yes. Which is still out there in the world. You can still get your hands on a copy. I certainly have plenty of them here in my closet. It's unbelievable to me that it's 2 years. But yeah, it really was. I was inspired to write it when I had been doing this work of being sort of the community service lady in my community for several years. And that grew out of my own desire as a parent to just find ways to give back in our community meaningfully, impactfully with my young children, who are now 20, 18, and 13. But at the time, were little. And I'm sure everyone who's listening can relate to this. It's very difficult to find meaningful volunteer activities for young children. I think a lot of nonprofits very rightfully close the door to us because they are worried about kids getting into things and liability and all of those types of things. But we live in New York City. And when my kids were young, I just refused to accept the fact that no one wanted us as volunteers. I just wouldn't take no for an answer. And so I started working with an organization actually that your listeners should know about called Doing Good Together. And that is a national nonprofit. It's based in Minneapolis. They have a terrific website, doinggoodtogether.org. And they have this very elegant mission of helping parents raise kids who care and contribute. And so I quickly, when I discovered them, asked if I could be their sort of New York representative here. And they were so excited. And since then have now branched out to a lot of other communities across the country. So I curate a listing every month of family-friendly volunteer opportunities that is then pushed out from Doing Good Together to my subscribers. And I have, thousands of subscribers now. So that listing just provides, wonderful places and activities and events for families with kids of all ages to volunteer. And so I started doing that 8 or 9 years ago. And again, it was just my passion. It just turned into this really wonderful side thing that I was doing. And I became everyone's resource. Friends would call and strangers would call and say, can you come talk to my Girl Scout troop? Can you come talk to our temple, to our church? Can you help me find a project for my kids' bar mitzvah? Can you help me figure out what to do with all of these things I want to donate, these toys or these gently used clothes or books? And so I just became the Rolodex, old-fashioned word for this, in my community. And I thought, wow, seems like people really want this information. And maybe if I put it all in one place in a really easy to use, practical kind of boots on the ground book, it would be helpful. And so it really is a guidebook. It is just bullet points. I have little stories and sidebars in there about my family and our experience in doing this work, but really it's to give people tools and tips and resources and websites and links to just do this work on their own, because I firmly believe that all parents instinctively understand, as I do, as I'm sure you do, that to raise kind and compassionate and grounded and grateful kids, we have to teach them and role model for them how to serve others and how to be kind to others. So it has, it's really taken off. I think people really responded to it. Friends tell me they leave it on the coffee table and the kids pick it up and they flip through it and they say, oh, I'm having a birthday party soon. Maybe we could do this, this giving project for my birthday. And that's really gratifying work.
That is so cool. So when you were talking, I was wondering, did you grow up in a service-oriented family?
That's a good question. I've recently started getting that question, and I will say that the answer is sort of kind of. My parents were immigrants to this country. They came from Ukraine after World War II. So, it's a classic immigrant story. They had been in a displaced persons camp, which we would now call a refugee camp in Germany at the end of the war. They were brought over, sponsored separately with their nuclear families by some agencies here that did that sort of work. And their lives were spent in working really hard, many jobs to put food on our table and to educate their kids and to have a home. My dad was a contractor. He works for himself. So resources were tight. Philanthropically, I think my family really supported their church and the Ukrainian community. So when people would come over from Ukraine, it's a kind of typically, immigrant story, like you help others who are coming from your country. But it's funny, they didn't have a lot of time because they worked a lot to keep their family together. They didn't have this sort of luxury, I will call it that, the resources and the luxury of time to do this work with their kids out in the community. But I do have very strong memories of going with my mom and helping the elderly in our community through our church. Or my mom always had us watch the telethon, the Jerry Lewis. Do you remember the Jerry Lewis telethon? And she would let me call and pledge my $3, and then the envelope would come, and I think we sent cash. It's crazy to me. There are just these little things. Or my mom would always support. For some reason, she always had a soft spot for sick, for ill children, and so St. Jude was a big thing for her, and so we would always send a few dollars to St. Jude. So the memories I have are not necessarily going out and doing the work, hands-on work with my parents, the way that I think is so important to do with my kids. But it was always sort of there, that you do what you can for others. I graduated after receiving almost, a full scholarship from college. And my distinct memory, one of my only memories of something my mother said to me during that period was, they helped you. And so now it is your responsibility, as much as you can, to donate back to this school, because they gave you an education. And so it's your responsibility to give back. So those things sink in, even though it wasn't really our practice, just out of, sheer lack of time.
You bring up so many points that I want to highlight just from telling your story of your childhood. And the first thing is having the luxury of time.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us have a greater luxury of time than others of us. Right. And I think it's really good to use some of that time luxury, if you have it, to help other people, to give to causes, to serve in whatever way speaks to you. But for those of us who don't have that luxury of time, how else can we help? Can we donate money? Can we
Sure.
do both?
Of course. Well, so the the subtitle of the book is super important because it's the busy families
Busy
guide,
family.
because that was always my bent here, is that we don't have the time. But more importantly, to your first point, we tend to prioritize a lot of other things for our kids, right? So we
Mhm.
all seem to find the time for the piano lesson and the soccer lesson and the soccer team, the hockey, the ballet, the tutoring for college entrance exams, et cetera, et cetera. We could go on and on and on. And I typically do that as an exercise with parents when I'm speaking to them. I'm going to say a laundry list of activities. Raise your hand if your kid does any of these. And I go through it, and it's endless, right? We're so fortunate. We do so much enrichment for our kids, because why? We believe that substantively helps to improve their chances of being successful, happy people, right? However, I would argue that this work of finding a pocket of time on your very busy weekend to go to the food pantry to make a donation, to go and work in the soup kitchen for a couple of hours, to go do a park cleanup, that is actually living your values, right? That is showing your kids what you prioritize and what you value. There's an author named Laura Vanderkam, and she recently just came out with a new book, but in a previous writing, she wrote, instead of saying, I don't have time for something, say it's not a priority for me, and see how that feels. And so if you say that to your children, like, it's not a priority, it's we don't have time to go and visit with the elderly today, we don't have time to go and work in the soup kitchen. That might be true, but you're also showing them what you prioritize. But we do have time to go to the soccer tournament or the birthday party or whatever it is. So I'm always about, like, we need to show our kids by making those kind of tough choices. But more importantly, the book lays out, I think, in really simple terms. I don't focus so much on philanthropic giving. My family does as much of that as we possibly can, and I absolutely encourage that in my children and in others. But I recognize that there's, many people, that is just not a real reality for them, given their financial resources. I think everyone has something to give. I think people give as generously as they can. In fact, I think there's a lot of data that shows that the folks who actually make less money give a larger percentage of their income to charity through tithing and churches and things. But really, the book is focused on things you can do with your family and with your kids. And again, I'm all about, you don't need to fly around the world to build a school, right? These are things you are doing every day organically as you move through your life in the things that you're already doing and planning. So your kid has a play date on a snow day. I live in the Northeast, so there's a snow day and a kid comes over to hang out, and we're baking cookies and we're doing arts and crafts. So some of those cookies are going on a plate with foil and going to the nursing home, literally right next door. And we read a book about giving and about senior citizens and about, sharing love with our neighbors. And they make cards or Valentines, and we deliver them to the senior service agency in my community. They're already drawing and doing arts and crafts. They're already baking, and I don't need to eat all of those cookies.
Right.
So what can we do with the activity we're already doing to insert some kindness and some goodness? I say, for people with young children who are sitting at the dinner table or breakfast table with their knife and their fork waiting for the food, right? Like it's a restaurant waiting for you to serve them. What if there was just a pile of construction paper and crayons and markers right there, or printables that you have downloaded and printed out, where they can decorate cards for our military or our veterans, where they can make cards for hospitalized children, where they can make cards for isolated senior citizens we know who have been so lonely and isolated, particularly this last year. And that's while they're sitting and waiting for their food, right? I'm not saying you got to carve out an hour of your time. They're just sitting there anyway, and you can be encouraging this sort of activity. So the book really tries to give those sorts of tips, and I call those kitchen table kindness activities. You're already planning a birthday party. What if, instead of piling up gifts in the corner, your child asked for donations in lieu of gifts, or asked for books gently used books that can then be donated to an under-resourced classroom. So what are the ways that you can organically incorporate this into your life? Because I actually think I saw this as a title of one of your podcasts, your kids learn more by what you do than what you say. And so in doing these things, very gently, very organically, this is not like we're not preaching all the time. This is just what our family does. This is just how our family moves through the world.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I love the idea of the play date, and you're baking cookies anyway. Why not just put a few on a tray and take it to the senior
Fire
center,
station,
or
the police,
whoever? It could be anyone.
EMS, like, we all, this last year, I wrote an article about the gifts of this pandemic, the things that we should actually keep. And one of those is an appreciation for the people who put their lives on the line for us every single day. Heroes did not get created in March of last year. These heroes, these firemen, these EMS workers, these frontline workers, people in the hospital emergency rooms, they do this work all the time for us. And so to show that gratitude and that appreciation for them on an ongoing basis, not on a special day, just every day, always to acknowledge, always to recognize our veterans, our military, people who sacrifice so much for us, our isolated neighbors and senior citizens, kids who are ill and in the hospital. Those people are there. I say this all the time. All the time. We do so much giving and so much charitable work around Thanksgiving and Christmas and Hanukkah.
Yes.
Giving, I call those the giving holidays, right? From mid-November to January. And that's so wonderful and so important. And I am not diminishing that at all. And my listing for Doing Good Together is robust those months. There's so much to do.
So much opportunity.
However, I will remind everyone that on January 2nd, there are people who are homeless in our community, and there are people who are hungry. In fact, hungrier, because in January and February, the food pantries are empty.
Right.
And, hunger and homelessness and poverty and living marginally, folks who suffer from these things, they don't go away after the holidays. Those things are there every single day of the year. And so I think that these are all things we can be doing all the time. Kind of, it's a mindfulness practice, really. It's keeping sort of eyes, ears, and heart open and mind open to the folks around you who might be in need and who might just benefit from some kindness and a smile and a little, sticky note left on their desk telling them to have a great day, or a little bunch of flowers for the security guard at your school or the crossing guard, or bringing a hot coffee to the crossing guard on a snowy day. It's just like that random acts of kindness idea, which is kind of taken off, and there's a lot about it on social media, but I like to say it's actually not so random. It has to be intentional. You have to actually move through your day knowing and thinking about the ways that you're going to do these things, and doing them and actually following through. That's the point. You can have the idea. It's following through on the idea and showing your kid and holding your child's hand as you do these things.
I love it. As you were talking, I was just thinking about how I have a running grocery list, like a standard grocery list of things we use every week. And then when I make the grocery list at the, right before I go to the grocery store, then I see which of our standard things we need, and then did any other stuff get written on the list through the week. But as I'm sitting here thinking, and then most often my kids at least one of them goes shopping with me. But I was thinking, why don't I just add a couple of staple items to my weekly grocery list, and then we could just automatically be purchasing things to donate to the food pantry, and then I could check the hours, and hopefully it'll be open to drop off after we leave the store, and we could just bag it separately, drop it off, and it's just a weekly thing that gets done, and it's not a whole lot of extra time or effort. But
you go to the grocery store and the pasta will be like buy two get one free.
Right.
They always have that. And so you think to yourself, like, I don't need 3 boxes of pasta. Like, I already have pasta. So you look for those things, or the canned vegetables and things. Those things are always on sale. Those things are always kind of in bulk, the things that they got too much of. I've done a project for community service days for different organizations and religious groups and stuff, where kids can decorate a giving bag. So one of those reusable cloth bags, they can paint on it or decorate it. It can even have, things already drawn on it. The kids can color it in if they're really little. And that can be the bag that you fill, or that you put some items in when you go, that's going to be donated to the pantry. And you keep that bag. So you go to the pantry, you drop your items off, and you keep that bag in your car. And then that's your bag. That's your good giving bag, that you let the kids find these deals. And that, here's also another great activity for little kids. Like, if they're learning math skills and whatever, and you're, walking around and they see, hey, buy two, get one free, mommy. There you go. So we're going to buy two. We're going to take two and put one in the bag, one in the bag. And then you drop it off at the food pantry. And that's just, the bag stays in your car, and it's just a part of what and I also have encouraged folks, like, you have an elderly neighbor, it is the middle of winter, he or she is not going to make it out. And maybe they do get their groceries delivered. Maybe they have a family member. My mom is 90. She doesn't get out of the house. She lives far, kind of far from me. My brother comes, brings her groceries. But honestly, if you have a neighbor like this, or someone's not well, you just, shoot them an email or call them up. I'm running to the market. What can we pick up for you today? The answer is probably going to be nothing. It might be a jar of tomato sauce, and you can get that thing and let your child deliver it to that neighbor. And that creates this relationship and this bond. And that's nothing. That doesn't take anything. You're already doing it. You're already going,
Mm-hmm. I love it. And all the things you're saying, just like you said, they don't take a whole lot of money. They don't take a whole lot of time. They're not super inconvenient. And it's
Right.
just kind of finding creative ways to add giving and service into your life as it already exists. If that's the smallest step you can take, that doesn't really have to change much or add much stress or time or effort.
No, in fact, I would argue it's not adding anything. Like this notion of, people who legitimately say we work two jobs each, and the kids are very busy on the weekends, and we spend the day on Sunday at church. I get it. But doing all of the things we just said does not require you to carve out an hour of your time.
No, 5 minutes.
Right. So,
So
and it shows your kids that it's important. Even in the midst of our very, very busy lives, we're still going to be kind to others. We're going to do what we can with what we have, right? Where we are, with the gifts that we have, with the, with resources that we can share. Everyone has something to give. And I think that's an important, empowering message for kids. I think that's where my teen book is really, that's something that I'm trying to communicate to them. And it's such a this book was written for parents of young children. The teen book is written for teens. And I really didn't want it to come off as sort of preachy and naggy. But at the end of the day, I wanted to give them the power, the skills, the empowerment to know that they have talents and they have gifts. And
oh yes,
there in the world is going to benefit from those. And what a wonderful feeling to give those things to someone. Don't you want to give your teen the opportunity to have that fantastic feeling where their skill set, they know how to use the telephone and the social media and the whatever, and there is a way for them to teach that skill to an elderly person so that that person can communicate with their grandchildren using their FaceTime or their phone or their email. What a gift. You just changed someone's life with something that's just natural in you. You have this technology skill, you have these, or you're a musician, or you're an artist, or you're a dancer, or you are a great athlete, or whatever it is. Like, what do you have, teen, that you can share with others that will substantively improve their lives, even in the very smallest way? And that will be such a joy, and the gift of the endorphin rush of that feeling. It's called a helper's high, and it's a real thing. It's been scientifically proven. You do something nice for someone else, you cause them to be joyful and grateful and to smile back at you. You immediately get a rush, a physical sensation. Why would we not want to give that to our kids, and especially to our teenagers who are struggling so much to find the joy and the purpose in life? Every commencement speech, every graduation speech this year is going to talk about, what is your purpose? How is your life going to have meaning? And I think everybody has to come back to, serving and helping and being kind to others. That's it.
And I think also for teenagers, this could be a whole different discussion, but with the rise of social media and all the complexities that come along with that, but particularly for our kids who are still developing their sense of self. It's so easy. I mean, even adults struggle with it, but it's even a bigger struggle, I think, for our kids, where they look at everyone's highlight reel on social media and the person's dressed better and they have better makeup or they have a better body or they look cooler or they caught the ball better or whatever it is. It just makes everyone in the world look better than them. And
Mm-hmm.
then it chips away at their sense of worth and
Yep.
value. And
Confidence.
what better antidote to that than to give of your time or yourself or your energy or your money or whatever it is? Empty your piggy bank of pennies that comes up to $2.45, whatever it is. But what better way to build and strengthen your sense of self and your sense of worth than to give to someone else?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a whole chapter in the teen book about social media that speaks to that, but also speaks to the fact that it can be a tool for negative things, right? As we have seen, unfortunately, it can be a way for people to share painful, messages and things that hurt others, unfortunately. But it can also be a way of amplifying the good. And I encourage them. The whole chapter is about using social media, using technology to spread positive, helpful, happy, joyful, kind, good messages. And so amplifying this good, elevating someone's story, elevating organizations in your community who are doing good and meaningful work. If you are volunteering, putting that out there. This is a place that will accept us as teens to volunteer. I really love it here. Who wants to come with me? Using social media to spread positive messages. I think that's where we turn this around and say, we're going to stop. I don't follow any negative things on any platform. I only follow positive messaging, great organizations doing meaningful, powerful work, impacting lives. And that brings me joy. So when I'm on social media, I am only seeing good and positive things, not things that are making me feel bad about myself or about the world, because I feel bad enough about the world. So I don't need that in my face 24 hours a day, right? And that's what I am trying to stress to these kids. You have the power to take a message, a positive message, and amplify it. So use that power and it will make you feel so, so much better.
I love that. And I do agree with you. I am not an anti-technology person or parent or proponent. I think it is nothing more than a tool.
Right.
And if we can use it to build ourselves and the world up, or we can use it to tear ourselves and the world down, and different people use it for different things, and let's just use it for good.
Yes, yes, it's powerful, and we could use
Very
it.
powerful.
And so I have, lists in that chapter of accounts that are vetted and that have, are reputable, of things that they can be following, people who are genuinely interested in spreading kindness and goodness in the world. And that is not to say that we don't need to be aware of the news and to be aware of what's going on and be aware of social justice issues and be concerned about those things. But at the same time, let's use this to make ourselves feel better. It's similar to a bullying situation, right? If a kid on a playground, you want our kids to be upstanders, right? So if you see someone being bullied or being treated poorly, that you stand up for them, that you get an adult, that everybody should just ignore the bully, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a similar situation with social media. Instead of focusing on these negative comments and all of this stuff, which again tears that person down and makes yourself feel really bad, how can we be an upstander in the social media world? And I think there's a lot of work being done around this for teens and preteens, especially, because it's younger and younger and younger. But I do think, there is so much good out there if kids just saw it and knew how to access it. And so I hope the teen book can kind of fill that void, and give them the inspiration. Again, I also want very much not to set this unreasonable expectation. There are some incredible young people out there doing amazing work, but I joke that, you don't need to quit school, sail across the ocean and,
Yeah.
and address the UN and then
Yeah.
write a book about it, or write a poem and speak it at the inauguration.
Right.
To be an inspiring person, right? There are
Absolutely.
some people who are absolutely mind-blowingly inspiring, and kids who have started protests and have done really impactful things with social justice and trying to make political activism, cool, and to get kids involved, and they are the future. But this pressure of, you are the future and we're waiting for you to fix it for us, and the world needs you, like, gosh, that is a lot when you have homework.
That's heavy. Yeah, that's due tomorrow.
Right. You have homework, you have to study for the SAT, you have a part-time job so you can get gas money, so you can get to school, you have to babysit your siblings because your mom and dad work or have to go to school. That's a lot for the majority of teens. And so again, the book is written just like this, my first book, in a way that says, just start where you are. Don't make yourself crazy. What are the things that you can do today in your community, however that is defined? Is that your apartment where you live with your family? Is that the floor of your apartment building? Is that your block where your house is? Is that your school? Is that your part-time job? Is that the local place where you play basketball? Who are the people you can impact? How can you clean up some garbage that you see on the street instead of leaving it there? How can you get you and your friends together to do a little fundraiser for a local child who's ill? What are the things that you can do today to help somebody else, and by doing so, to help yourself and to feel great about yourself and to give yourself just the best feeling in the world? That's all it is. It is not, flying around the world, quitting school, starting a nonprofit, raising millions of dollars. These expectations are way out of reach for the 99.9% of these, of anyone, particularly kids today. So I just want them to know they have gifts and they have the power within them. So how can they use them?
Your words are so inspiring. I just love it. My mind is going in a million different directions.
Well, I hope you'll have me back when the teen book comes out, because
Oh, definitely.
finding is, I love talking to parents with young children because that's really fun and they're little, and it's, I always get the, like, how old do they have to be to start doing this work? And I'm like, you can start when they're babies, it eventually it's like osmosis, it'll start to seep in. But I do think the teen work is going to really take off, because I think our young people today, especially after this very challenging period we've just been through, they need to be inspired. They need to have some hope for the future.
And I also think, not to be stereotypical, but I also think that this generation, everybody says kids today, whatever. Every generation says that.
Right, exactly.
The 50s, oh my gosh, Elvis and kids, and he's ruining them. But I really think that this generation is very socially aware. Not just social media socially aware, like what their peers are doing, but they're aware of the issues in the world and the struggles and the problems. And it can feel soul crushing if you just focus on the problems. But I think they have just as a collective, they have a strong desire to make things better.
Yes.
And maybe they can't purge the country of systemic racism, but maybe they can check on their elderly neighbor, or maybe they can go to a protest, or maybe they could write a letter to their congressperson or something like that.
Help do a voter registration drive at their school. Maybe they can register to vote themselves and encourage their friends to do so. And I talk about this in the book, like, again, these very small incremental things. There are some studies that show that, as you said, this generation of younger people, early 20s, teens, is not only do they care about issues, they're tremendously accepting, they're very inclusive, the labeling and the exclusion, like they recognize each other. This is not a big deal, right, for them. They don't throw up these barriers about, you're in that group and you're that color and you're that gender identity. They are a group of people that want everyone to be accepted because they themselves want to be accepted. And they also want to do, and there's a chapter about social entrepreneurship entrepreneurship because I thought it was sort of a reach chapter, but an important concept for the kids to understand, which is you can do well in this world. You can be a successful person and put money in your bank account and put food on the table for your family and still do good for other people. So there are
Yes.
many companies and many organizations and banks and other major corporations that now rightfully have a mission or have a part of their mission being that they will give back and they will do good for others. And there is some data to show that kids today really care about doing well as doing good for others. And I think that is super encouraging. It's not just, make money for myself. It is, how can I make money for myself and be successful and use my education? But then how can I do something with that to do good for other people and to change the world in incremental ways? And so that is encouraging to me. I think social entrepreneurship, I think anyone, any young person who's starting a company needs to be thinking about, okay, I'm going to start this company and I hope it's profitable, but how can I do it in a way that somehow gives back? And I think that that's a growing movement. I think there's a lot being written about it. There are wonderful programs, college programs. And I think that that's a real opportunity. And here we are, like, there's no, those two things are not mutually exclusive, right? You have to be a do-gooder and not make any money, right? This notion of social work and those jobs are important. And there are many, many people who want to do them, and that's great, but you can still do good in the world and be successful. And
it reminds me of Tom's Shoes.
Yes, I mentioned them in the book that the founder wrote. Yeah, of course.
And isn't it that for every pair of shoes they sell, they give a pair of shoes to a needy person?
I have a listing in the book about, there's one-to-one programs like that, and then there are programs that give a portion of, right? So Tom's Shoes, the Feed Bag Company, which is a bag, purses that gives money away. I think it's money. I don't think it's a one-to-one, and that you should be a consumer for that. Right. So now these kids are consumers, right? So they have jobs and they're making money. And so how are they consuming goods and how are they purchasing? How are they making those choices? I think to recognize, to challenge kids to look at the thing that they're buying and see if they have a choice. So there's 2 bottles of water. One is, it's called, I think, Ethos water at Starbucks, and one's not. And Ethos water actually gives money back to have clean water around the world, and the other bottle of water doesn't. So which bottle of water are you going to buy?
Right, you're buying one anyway.
Buying one anyway, right? This bar saves lives. That's another one.
My husband just brought them home for the first time from the grocery store. He was like, "Look what I found."
So they have those, really wonderful granola bars and other treats like that. You're going to buy those bars anyway. Why wouldn't you buy this bar, which is, again, another one-to-one? So for every bar, they give a packet of nutrition to someone in a third world country so that a child can live. So, to be aware of that, to be conscious of that, to keep your eyes and your mind open to that, and to say, oh, I'm going to make a choice on what I'm going to buy based on the fact that this organization has a mission to do good in the world, a social justice issue, on a social justice issue. So I'm really, I think that there are a lot of ways to teach kids about this as they get older. And it is challenging, with little kids, you can take them with you to the food pantry, you can take them with you. They're kind of coming along with you and you're doing this work together, which is so important. With teenagers, it's a little harder. And I think you need to give them the motivation and the inspiration and the spark to say, this is something I want to pursue on my own, or I want to do with friends. That's another big tip in the book, is really encourage kids to do this work together. Everything is more fun.
More fun.
The social environment, and that's, post-pandemic, obviously. I talk about that in the first book about, if you are going out to do a picnic in the park with a couple of other families and your kids have friends there, you could start that picnic with a little garbage cleanup. We take our gloves and we take our garbage, pickers, and we take our garbage bags and we do a little cleanup, and then we put our blankets out and we have our picnic and we play with our balls and bubbles. And for teens, it's the same. I think a teenager who, and there is some data around this, that if a kid has friends who are volunteering, they are more likely to do it and they're more likely to stick with it.
Mhm.
And it's just more fun, right? So a group of kids going out and doing a project together or volunteering together, then they can go out together and get pizza after. Like, everything is more fun in a group, and that is a good kind of peer pressure, I think.
Mhm.
And so to encourage that and to encourage fundraising events where kids can work together on the best way to raise money, and I have a whole chapter on fundraising. I think kids have tremendous energy and ideas, and they're persistent, and they don't they have kind of, if they ask someone to donate and the person says no, they say okay, and they move on to the next person. I think that kids can be tremendous fundraisers, and again, what a fantastic feeling to run a car wash on a Sunday for childhood cancer and raise a few $1,000s. I mean, it starts as like this lemonade stand idea, and it kind of goes from there. And then to be able to hand over a check to someone, what a fantastic feeling to know that you did something fun with your friends, and you helped somebody, you helped an organization to do really, really good work.
Hmm. I love it. So inspiring. I definitely encourage everyone to get your book written for kids. I mean, for
Yeah.
parents of younger kids. And we will definitely connect again when your second book for teenagers is out, because I know it's going to be amazing and so inspiring. And really, I think, give kids who have this urge and this desire to do something but don't really know how to start or what to do, I think it's going to channel that really good energy into some really useful
Yeah.
channels.
That's the word I like to use about both books: actionable. It's all
Yes.
great in theory. We're having a lovely conversation. This is all amazing. But tell me what to do. How do I
Right.
go out right now, boots on the ground with my family? Or how do I go outside right now as a teenager? And what can I do today? And I
Yes.
hope that the book provides those, step by step tips and tricks.
I think it's going to be amazing.
Thanks.
So, where can people find you, Natalie, learn more about you, connect with you?
Absolutely. So my website is simpleactsguide.com, simpleactsguide.com. And on social media, I'm primarily on Instagram, but I think it also goes on to Facebook and other places. And I would love for your followers to follow me. I try and post about organizations, about events, about special days that are coming up when service is really encouraged. Again, it's just like a place where I provide as many tips and ideas and resources as I can, and where I share and amplify other wonderful stories and other wonderful organizations. And that's just at Simple Acts Guide.
All right. I will put these connection points in the show notes as well, so people can go there
Terrific.
and
Thank you so
find
much.
you.
Thanks, Erin. I really appreciate your time, and I hope that this was inspiring for your listeners. And again, if someone comes to my website, you'll be able to contact me if anyone has any specific questions. Like, my kid really loves horses. How can they volunteer with horses? I have ideas about volunteering with horses. So I tend to be again, a little bit of a Rolodex, and I actually love a challenge. When someone says to me, like, my kid plays hockey, how can they volunteer? I'm like, okay, let's figure that out. And I think that there's always an answer. There's always a way for kids to give back. And particularly if you tell me your kid has a passion, and so they have an interest. And so that's half the battle right there.
Oh,
So
yeah.
love helping individual parents and organizations to figure these things out. So please, please reach out.
That is awesome. So, if you are a parent and you're looking for some ideas for your child, please reach out to Natalie. If you're a parent and you coach your child's team, or you run the athletic club of the sport, or you are a Boy Scout
Yeah.
leader or
Oh
a
yeah.
Girl Scout leader, and you're looking for some service activities for your troop, or you're planning your child's birthday party, whatever, I think that you should definitely reach out to Natalie and check out her site and her book, because clearly, as we've learned during this episode, there are many, many ways to help and to give back and to make the world a little bit better of a place. And like, if we all put our effort into just trying to make the world a little bit better than we found it, or a little bit better than it was yesterday, if we all did that, I I can't even I can't even envision what the world would look like. It's just too fabulous to conceive of.
I know. If everyone did one thing, Just think about that.
One thing.
One thing.
The world would be amazing.
Kinder and gentler, which is, I think, honestly, what we all need right now. Just a little kinder and a little gentler to each other.
Absolutely. A little kinder and a little gentler to each other and to ourselves.
Ourselves, absolutely.
So thank you so much, Natalie. This was really fun. I, for one, am feeling really inspired. So I know my listeners are going to get some really good ideas. And listeners, if you want to share your good ideas and what you are pursuing with your kids, please send me an email. I'll make sure to share it with Natalie, or Natalie, if they send it to you, let me know.
Absolutely. That would be amazing. I love sharing, amplifying other things that people are doing. It's fantastic. I love it. And again, people are like, oh, it seems bragging if I put it on social media. I'm like, absolutely not. Because you are showing, again, you're role modeling for other people that this is something I did with my family and it's something that you can do too. So it's great. This has been wonderful, Erin. Thank you so much.
You are welcome, and thank you. And so I would like to turn that idea of it's bragging on its ear a little bit and say it's inspiring.
That's right. Amen. That's absolutely right.
All right. Well, thank you, Natalie. And that wraps up today's very inspiring conversation. And I hope that wherever you are in this world, you will make it a little bit better today than you found it.